And it takes so long to start recording. There we go. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Science Horizons Sustainability Sector Showcase presents Energy and Infrastructure. This is part 4 of our events. We have had a great week, and I'm looking forward to one more great night. Before I go any further, I do want to recognize that I am on the traditional unceded territory of the Coquitlam and Squamish peoples here in what's now known as Burnaby, British Columbia. I make this recognition as an acknowledgement of the work and effort that have come before me to preserve the land and water that I use, and as a way to give thanks to my children and my grandchildren for letting me borrow their land and water, and as an acknowledgement of my commitment to take action towards reconciliation, as we have these big conversations about sustainability. Systems of oppression are so interlinked with it all. So hopefully starting these discussions in this way and building from these discussions, we'll all be able to work towards reconciliation here for everyone on Turtle Island. Thank you for joining us this evening. We are going to be having a panel discussion about energy and infrastructure as we dive into the green economy of Canada. Tonight, we are going to start off getting to know each other a little bit, who's in the room. Then we're going to have our panel discussion. And finally, we will get into some breakouts where you'll be able to ask questions directly to our wonderful panelists. So to kick things off, we will start with our Slido. So Slido is an interactive app. If you open up another tab on your computer or pull out your phone, you can go to slido.com, enter 515074, and you can let us know where you're joining from. Ottawa, right on. Shout out to everybody who's on East Coast time. It is 8 o'clock there, so thank you, Megan, Sophia, Veronica, Brianna. Pickering for the 4th night in a row, represent. Vancouver, Lakefield, Ottawa, get some love. Edmonton, love seeing Edmonton. I'm from Edmonton originally, so shout out. So good to see such a wide geographic diversity of folks who are here. Oh, somebody was representing. I want to make sure you get to represent. I'm representing for the retirees. Fantastic. So what are you curious about in industry and energy, or in infrastructure and energy? Tongue twister. What are you hoping to get away from tonight? What are you curious about? What do you want to know? If there's one question that you could get answered tonight, what would it be? How to nationalize province-specific energy? Oh, that is a humdinger of a question. That's a good one. Life cycle analysis. How effective is the carbon tax? That's a complex question, I think. A sticky question. How to facilitate the green transition. I love seeing that. Excellent. Jason, I saw you hopped out for a second and came back in. Can I just get a quick mic camera check? I can hear you. I can't see you. Can anyone else see Jason?
No, sorry, it's off for a second, but I'll turn it back on in a second.
Okay, right on. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose you. So awesome. Some really interesting questions. Hopefully we'll be able to dive into these in some respects, and you'll get to see biofuels coming up. Awesome. Love seeing renewable energy sources. So great. We will hopefully dive into some of these well in a second here. But we should start with where we're at. Oh, Hannah's here. Right on. 2 Hannahs in a row. Perfect. Defining energy and infrastructure. When we're talking about this, what are we talking about? So on the energy side, it's the generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity, including the transmission of fuel sources. We should also be thinking about heating sources, natural gas, those elements of energy as we're thinking about these big systems. And infrastructure is the physical and organizational structures and facilities needed for the operation of society. There are roads, there are buildings, there are ways of doing things. Infrastructure and energy, I think of the four sectors that we're really looking at throughout the showcase, is the broadest in all its capacities. Something that one of the panelists said last night was, as we're thinking about climate change and climate adaptations, we need some really fundamental changes. And as we talk about energy and infrastructure, I can't think of something more fundamental to our way of life that as we're talking about transitions and changes. It's going to be a big task. I believe in us. We can get there. Hopefully tonight will be a step for all of us on our journey towards sustainable futures together. So what's the program behind all of this? So the Science Horizons program from the United Nations Association in Canada is a wage subsidy program that's focused on employing youth in the green economy of Canada. We provide wage subsidies and training to our wonderful youth who are joining us this evening, interested in a diverse range of topics. And one of the fundamentals to our work is the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. We try to use the SDGs as the bedrock of our work and really build up from them. The SDGs are 17 goals that were laid out by the United Nations in 2015. Everyone, everywhere is responsible for achieving these goals. And when we talk about energy and infrastructure, there's so many goals that connect to them. So when we get into the specifics of the goals, the three that jump to the top of my mind, the first one, affordable and clean energy, that's all about energy. Industry, innovation, and infrastructure, that's all about infrastructure. And sustainable cities and communities, municipalities have so much power over infrastructure, over zoning, over those laws. When we think about communities and the way that they structure themselves, there's a huge leverage point there amongst these goals. Other goals that these start to impact, from an environmental lens, 13, climate action, 14, life below water, 15, life on land. The way that we produce energy, the way that we build our infrastructure can have so much impact on the world around us. When we talk about the just transition, when we think about the impact that energy production has on climate action, carbon emissions, the connection to climate action, and the other potential environmental detriments that we see from these things, obviously, as we move towards sustainable solutions, we're going to see positive impacts on the environment. And some other SDGs that touch on them in different ways. Number 3, clean health and well-being. Number 6, clean water and sanitation. And number 12, responsible consumption and production. Good health and well-being, clean water and sanitation. Infrastructure, like water treatment plants, are infrastructure. So there's a clear connection right there. Hospitals are infrastructure. That's good health and well-being. Electricity is used for so many different things related to good health and well-being. There's a ton of connections there. And responsible consumption and production, the way that we're producing our energy, the way that we're consuming our energy, if we as consumers and producers are striving for sustainable solutions, we'll see positive outcomes. It's really a bit of a trick slide. It isn't just these 9 SDGs, it's all 17 of them. They're interconnected. You can pick any of the SDGs and connect them to energy and infrastructure and see how achieving sustainable solutions starts to contribute to many different SDGs. So that's a bit of the background and bedrock to our work as Science Horizons and our work as a team, as a group. We're all together in this. We're going to make it happen. And speaking of together and making it happen, you're sick of listening to me talk. You want to hear our 2 wonderful speakers. Thank you very much, Alex and Jason, for being with us tonight. Alex Hebert is an engineer who graduated from the University de Sherbrooke in Quebec. He is currently the manager of the Zero Energy Buildings Learning Center at the British Columbia Institute of Technology, where he works supporting the construction industry transitioning to the BC Energy Step Code and the City of Vancouver Zero Emissions Building Bylaws, including Passive House International and Net Zero Energy Standards. When he's not in the office, he loves sailing, skiing, rock climbing with his wife, his 2 kids, and their golden doodle, Rosie. Thank you for being with us tonight, Alex. We're also joined by Jason Wong. Jason Wong is an engineer in training with Alberta Environment and Parks, working on industrial carbon pricing, climate policy analysis, and adaptation risk management. He's a climate change engineer on the climate change compliance team, currently acting as the director. I wanted to say that sentence because it's such a mouthful. I love it. With a master's in engineering and policy analysis from TU Delft in the Netherlands that focused on strategic, deep uncertainty thinking and the science policy interface, Jason is passionate about a just transition and not just a net zero future, but a truly sustainable one. Thanks for being with us, Jason. So as we kick things off, I'd love Alex, Jason, just to give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves. I've run through your CV resumes and your pets' names, but I'd love to give you just the opportunity to introduce yourselves to our guests.
Jason, you want to go first?
I was going to say your letter or your name starts first, but I'll jump in. I don't have any pets yet. I would love to maybe adopt a dog, rescue a dog one day, but also love to rock climb, Alex. Love that connection. To be honest, beyond what you've spoken to, Brett, I think you covered quite a bit. I don't think there's anything else specific I want to bring up right now, but I will say I have. I was looking for them earlier, but couldn't find them. But I have all these SDG posters from while I was in Europe. I've got to visit a couple of the UN offices, and they gave them out as souvenirs. And I used to have one up on my wall, but I can't find it. So I love thinking about SDGs and thinking about how to reach them. But I think I'll just continue introducing myself as we go along and answering questions. Thanks.
Yes. Okay. So my turn. My name is Alex. I'm originally from Montreal in Quebec. I moved to Vancouver in 2007 to go back to school. So I did engineering in Quebec, and then I did a master's in business at the University of British Columbia here. So came to the West Coast with my wife, drove across the country in about 3 days, got here just on time for the beginning of class 1. And the idea was to go back home after the program, but I couldn't do it because I fell in love with Vancouver and been here ever since. And the kids are born here, so Vancouver is definitely feels like home. And I'm not sure how much I should do now and how much I should keep for later, but super excited to be here. I can tell you I started as an engineer in a non-climate change related career and got to do a transition midway. And it feels really good to be paid to do work that is hopefully pushing society in the right direction. So I love this general idea of being able to earn money to pay for food and housing and kids, while also feeling you're helping move in the right direction. So I'm kind of excited about the topic tonight, and definitely looking forward to sharing some ideas with you guys.
I do have to know, Alex, what did you think of the cross-country drive?
Yeah, so it's funny. I've done it twice. I've done it for the first time in 2003 with a friend, and I did it round trip in 2 weeks, like it was a 2-week vacation. And I felt, this is crazy. You shouldn't drive back and forth. It's such a long drive. And it didn't get shorter the second time. What a big country. And I had this vague memories of bumping into tourists from France in Quebec that just arrived, and they told me about what they wanted to do, and it involved seeing Newfoundland, Quebec City, Ottawa, Toronto, Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver, and they have 2 weeks. And I'm like, yep, I don't think you understand how big this country is. So anyway, I would recommend it only if you have time. Don't rush it because it's a long drive.
Yes, absolutely. I've done the drive Edmonton to Toronto and back, and that was plenty.
And Ontario is surprisingly wide as a province. That's the other comment. I'm like, what a wide province.
It,
It, it feels like it never ends.
Maps do not do it justice. You get to Toronto and there's still 8 hours to Ottawa.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we don't need to talk about traffic.
All right.
So Jason and Alex, thank you for being with us. Thanks for sharing your wisdom. I'd love to start just kind of from a high level view. I'm curious from the lenses that you both have around energy and infrastructure, what are some of the key trends that are emerging right now? Where are there key opportunities for career development and the industry to grow? And where are there some challenges that people might be facing as they're thinking about a career in these areas?
How do you want to do this, Jason? Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
My internet's stuttering a little, so maybe you can jump in, Alex.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess what's interesting, and I'm gonna kind of focus on my current work, which is around buildings and energy and carbon associated to buildings. If you look at carbon emissions around the world, and in Canada, you could say that about 40% of emissions are somehow associated to buildings. It depends how you calculate it. It depends where you are, but I think 40% is a good number to reference here. And so buildings, if you care about climate change, are definitely center to the discussion. Um, when you look at where emissions come from in buildings, you can then, and again, I'm going to round the numbers a bit, but you can say that about 30% of those emissions, 30% of the 40%, no, sorry, 30% out of 40. So most of the emissions are from the operation of the building, the heating, the cooling, lighting, and so on. But there's still a good chunk. So out of that 40%, 10% comes from the embodied carbon. So the carbon associated to the materials used for the construction of the buildings. So 30% operation, 10% of global emission would be embodied carbon. Together, they're 40%. And so if you look at trends in my industry, they're all about building new buildings that are extremely energy efficient and low carbon from an operation point of view. But they're becoming more and more about building buildings with low embodied carbon, so doing life cycle assessment on materials. And you can then divide what I see into kind of two worlds, if you want, the world of small buildings and the world of big buildings. From a building code point of view, we refer to them as Part 3 or Part 9 buildings. But up to about 3 story in height and a certain size, you're considered a small building, and you don't necessarily need an architect or an engineer to be involved with the design. Anything above that is considered Part 3 building and requires architects and engineers. And from a career point of view, this matters because it's not really the same education and the same training that you're going to go for. But what's interesting is whether it's a house or a duplex or a small 4 or 6 or 8 units building, or it's a large high rise, everybody seems to be focused on that super energy efficient and low embodied carbon aspect of it right now. And maybe I can pause here and see if you want me to wait for later. But there's so many careers that are linked to both of them, both from a design and a construction point of view. And it's quite exciting. Like it's a fun time to be in the construction industry for sure.
Yeah, I think if you have some thoughts about specific
Yeah.
opportunities related to the industry, please, by all
Yeah.
means.
Okay. So again, and at any point, stop me if you feel I'm going too long, because it's hard to gauge, the level of details that are needed at this point. But if I go with that split between big buildings and small buildings, if you're going to design a large building, you need an architect, you need a registered architect to be involved, you need some professional engineers to be involved. If you're building a single family home and it's a very small home and it's not a luxury home, the chances are that you're going to do it with someone that is not a registered architect. You might work with a designer, you might buy plans that are pre-existing. So I'm going to kind of create that split quickly. So if you're working with large buildings, and you're passionate with design, you should look at what the careers are for both, architects and engineers. Architects are, what they sound like they are. They design, the building overall, they manage teams. Engineers are very diverse when it comes to construction. You have structural engineers, you have electrical engineers, you have mechanical engineers, you have geotech. So you have a very wide range of disciplines that are all changing the way they're thinking so that they can together deliver those buildings that are extremely energy efficient. So, we could talk about those later, but engineering and architecture are definitely, strong career in my field right now. Now, on the construction side, there's a growing demand for technicians and tradespeople who understand what a zero carbon building looks like. And then the hybrid between those two worlds are those who want to do engineering in school but want a career in the field. Anything that has to do with project management, site supervision, is changing a lot. So that's kind of large building, on the large building side. On the small building side, uh, uh, small builders, uh, house designers, and general contractors are evolving to deliver passive houses or passive house equivalent buildings. And there's a way to kind of get in that world from a different schooling. It's a different approach with your schooling, but it can lead to very rewarding careers as well, working on more projects, each project being smaller. And maybe I'll end with one more example. Within that world, both for larger buildings and smaller buildings, there's a growing need for folks that are often referred to as energy advisors. They're very much called energy advisors for smaller buildings. Sometimes they're called something else for large buildings, but it's a person that can hold the hand of a project team to get them to actually deliver a really good building. And these people usually learn how to do energy modeling, how to do the analysis for embodied carbon, but they're also good at helping teams workshop problems, find ways to do integrated design, get different disciplines to talk to each other, so that in the end, whatever is on paper can be built for real without too many problems. And so that's kind of a middle person that is helping the multiple disciplines work together, and that's a growing career as well. So maybe I can stop there and let Jason talk a little bit, and then tell me if you need me to add here.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, Jason, I'm curious, thinking from the climate change policy, energy related policy, what are some of the trends and opportunities and challenges that you are seeing?
Yeah, I think it's wait, you can hear me, right? Just to make sure. Okay, great. I think like this is a huge question because there's so many things to talk about, right? And climate change, of course, isn't just the technical aspects of you know, like energy delivery systems or infrastructure. There's so much more to it too. I hope at some point I might be able to squeeze in social infrastructure as a thing to talk about. But um, in general, I want to bring up the idea that just right now, it's like easier than ever to get involved in this space. And I hope like me saying that doesn't uh, doesn't sound I don't know, maybe tone deaf because maybe like I understand you're all finishing up your internships and looking for your next step, right? So I know job searches are always frustrating, but I'll put out there too. Uh, After this call, I'm happy to continue helping people figure out, their own journeys because I think there are so many different paths you can take. I don't fully understand all of your interests or backgrounds, but there's so many things happening. I want to give like a quick overview of just policy or political action. I guess in case you haven't kept up with the news or paid attention to the election, but every single major political party in Canada has had like at least a somewhat serious climate platform. Um, of the big parties, there are no parties saying like climate change isn't real. We don't have to think about that stuff anymore. Public polling for like sentiment or understanding of climate change and support for climate change action is almost always a supermajority, like almost always over like 60-ish% of Canadians saying they support it, they understand it, they think we need to do more, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I've I've started to take the approach of, people who push back against climate change, just forget about them because there's so many exciting things that are happening. Um, on the exciting side, like, I want to preface this by saying there's still massive, massive, massive challenge coming up ahead. But what's given me a lot of hope and kept me very optimistic is all of our like forecasts or trends for how quickly we can deploy certain things like solar electricity across the world. We keep beating these expectations. All of our forecasts for things like prices of batteries to put into cars or energy storage, like grid scale energy storage, we keep beating them by orders of magnitude. And yeah, if I were more prepared, maybe I would have come with a slide to show you some funny graphs. But basically, forecasts look like this, actual implementation looks like this, or even higher, right? So there are many reasons for that. But point is, like, there's tremendous momentum. The federal party that eventually won our last election has a very serious climate action like policy platform. Healthy economy, healthy environment, healthy economy. But we always just call it HEHE internally, and very proud to have coined that acronym internally at the provincial level. But I think one thing I want to point out as part of this massive program, this massive set of programs and policies is there's finally tremendous amount of money poured into like home energy efficiency. I'm sure Alex knows this way better than I do, but like we're constantly at a shortage of energy advisors, and we're having more trouble training people, at least in Alberta, to become energy advisors and to do that work to help small households, achieve those savings. Then we can. I lost the sentence. We're having trouble training people to help households. Like there's a massive career opportunity in just jumping into being energy advisors because there's a shortage and there's massive demand, especially in I'd say like rural communities or non-urban communities, uh, because climate action also needs to happen outside of big cities, right? So I won't dive into all these details about all these different types of policies, but billions are being poured into it. Billions more need to be poured in. Um, I think there's still a lot to debate over where is appropriate for money to go, how it should be distributed. Those are, the detailed policy questions that, people like me or people like you in the future get paid to figure out. But the momentum's there. The scary part, though, is the scale of change we still need is in some ways unimaginable. And, sometimes I think in saying that, people might feel, like I'm pessimistic or they might feel disheartened. But in the sense of job opportunities, I think my only message is that's great news, right?
Mm.
We need to scale up all of our efforts again by like literally orders of magnitude, right? Um, we need even more home energy advisors. We need more people planting trees. We need more people in industry figuring out how to help them reduce emissions. Uh, the scale of change is like COVID was, like people generally don't, humans, I mean, don't understand exponential growth. And COVID, I think, kind of reminded us how quickly things can get big, right? Uh, in the energy transition space, I think uh, we haven't, or we're at the beginning of that part of, excuse the reference to COVID, but like we're at the beginning of that wave, right? But we're going up. We're seriously going up, and it's just going to boom. So I'm very excited for people who are at the beginning of their careers. In some ways, so am I. But in terms of specifics, I see job opportunities all the time. Happy to like connect with attendees and to see if I can, direct some job postings their way or help them try to figure out exactly what they're interested in.
Can I jump in and just add quickly one thing? If you're trying to kind of narrow down specifics around careers, I would Google Minister Wilkinson mandate letter. And it's a letter that the Trudeau office sent to the Minister of Natural Resources on December 16th. So the letter is a month and a bit old, and it has a bullet list of things they have to do, and it ranges from the electricity grid to the building fleet and the building code to cars and light duty trucks to old growth forests to but it's a extremely inspiring bullet list of things that are part of the mandate of the minister, and it shows you where the money is going to flow in the next few years, and some crazy timelines. The minister has been asked to stop any subsidy to fossil fuels by 2023, to have a new building code across Canada that works towards net zero emissions starting in 2024 with a target, an interim target in 2030 and an ultimate target in 2050. But if you accept that as being the true mandate, you're like, oh my God, this is exciting. And the range of activities, from ecology to engineering, is also inspiring. And maybe the last piece I'm going to say is, when you're trying to decide what your career is going to be, you have to be somewhat comfortable with making mistakes, because it's so hard to know what an inspiring career could look like. I know I got it wrong quite a few times before I made my way to a job that I really like now. Um, and so at the end, you kind of have to probably do a bit of trial and error as well, unless you're the lucky one who had the vision and knows. But I think yeah, you have to accept that there's so many possibilities you have to try and see. But yeah, if you like computers, you can be sitting at a desk all day. If you like people, you can be talking to people all day. There's both. Um,
Can I jump in on that, Alex?
yeah, yeah.
Um, I want to say, like, I completely echo that, right? But I want to say, like, in some senses, no one's done this before, right? No one's done a clean energy transition in such a short period. Like the Industrial Revolution to switch to coal took, like tens, or you could argue like 100 years, right? What we're trying to do as like as a species, is unprecedented. That word has been used a lot lately, but um, my point is, I think in your careers too, there is no path, right? I think I've had a somewhat strong vision of what I want to do, but oftentimes there isn't a specific job posting that says like exactly what you want to do. Oftentimes there are multiple job postings that you might say, I wish I could do all of them at the same time, right? And there might not be an answer to do for which one you should do first. But just point is, um, no one's done it before, so have fun while you go along it too, right?
Mhm.
Take risks, and and yeah, do what feels right. Don't worry too much about the perfect career path too, because no one knows. No one's done it
Mhm.
before.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think in this day and age, if you can find your dream career as like your first job, you should write a book and you'll make
Mhm.
lots of money because
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
not a thing that happens in today's day and age. So
Mhm. Mhm.
certainly building from that. And one thing I want to say, Jason, to your point about us being at the beginning of the wave, I think it's very commendable that you managed to make a COVID analogy, something that we can be happy about. So well done to you, Jason. As as we start talking a little bit more in detail about some of those career opportunities that you're seeing, there's so many. It's such a broad spectrum as you both talked about. What are some of the key pieces, and maybe to help you hone in a little bit more, thinking from your own working experiences and the people that you're working with, what are some of the key skills and opportunities and experiences that you've seen that people have had that have really helped to bring them success in their careers?
I can jump in first.
Yeah, go
Um,
for it. Yeah.
sure. Uh, I think my first reaction, maybe especially because I'm surrounded by government bureaucracy and HR systems and whatever, is just general things like make sure you know how to write and communicate well. Um, Make sure you know how to work well with other people, resolve conflicts, etc., etc. Uh, One like key reason I think it's so important to make sure I guess you get the basics right is, um, given the urgency of the situation, uh, any like team conflicts or interpersonal conflicts, um, in a way it slows us down, right? Like we want to be able to focus on our work, and obviously, oftentimes it's unavoidable, right? But make sure you know how to deal with those properly, including if someone's like bullying or harassing you. Make sure you know how to handle that. Um, that aside, I think the key skills, or some of them to succeed in this space right now, I think, I want to draw upon what we were just talking about. Is like adaptability is massively
Mm.
crucial because, I mean, in general, I think in careers it's important, but in the climate space, um, I'm reminded of a few months ago at COP 20. Sorry, I can't remember. It was the 26th, but COP in Glasgow. Um, one representative from Alberta, Steve McDonald. He is the outgoing CEO of Emissions Reduction Alberta. They're an agency that funds emission reduction opportunities, and they also have at least one job opening right now. I'll throw out there. um, he said, we as Alberta didn't send as many representatives as maybe we could have, and he said it's very important to be at those tables because it's important to network as individuals, because oftentimes it really is knowing people, whether you're a politician or like an analyst, right? Knowing people, your network, helps tremendously in just absorbing information, keeping yourself open to thoughts, but then also being able to create opportunities uh, where none might exist, right? Including maybe even like starting your own companies, right? You don't necessarily have to find like a traditional job either.
Mhm.
There are tons of grants available. So that's an aside too. I forgot to mention in the trends part, but there are millions of dollars going out in the form of grants. I mean, UNAC itself is a great example. The program you were in, right? Like that didn't exist a couple of years ago. Um, but anyways, back to the point. these skills, adaptability, I think, is a massive one. Steve McDonald in Glasgow said, sometimes it feels like climate goalposts are moving every time, like, I guess he was sort of speaking to Alberta. Every time Alberta seems to set a goal, said, we get the impression that the international community has moved forward. And he said, welcome to the club. Everybody feels like that. So my point is, even as you like fit into a job, that job might change, right? Because the overall context is changing. So then the second skill, I guess I would say, is really crucial, is like some amount of systems thinking. I think is incredibly important, because climate change isn't it's not like a technical problem, right? I can't remember who said this, but someone said a great quote about how, like, sending a person to the moon is a really, really hard challenge, right? But fixing climate change is a complex challenge. Going to the moon, we have equations, we know, like, we can calculate these things. We know how to, how to do it. There are very defined scopes for the problem. Going to fix climate change, there's so many unknowns, right? It's a wicked problem. I don't know if you folks have come across those terms, but like, one of the definitions of a wicked problem too is we only have one chance to get it right. So there are also other cool parts to that, but I want to say, I think being able to understand this enormous system, or systems of systems, is incredibly important. Recognizing, none of us individually can solve the challenge, right? But then figuring out, where do we fit into it, and then thinking about, what are the levers, what are the things we can control within these systems that might have amplifying impacts. If we can identify those in our own jobs or in like policy programs, then you can have like a fast or a bigger impact than you might if you didn't think about it.
I'm going to sound like I'm just repeating what Jason said, but it's so important. The adaptability piece, I get the impression that, if you can work with people from other disciplines, you're going to be, at an advantage in an interview. So if you can somehow demonstrate your capacity to speak different language, I guess literally, or in this case technically, that would be really good. I'm not convinced that every university or every school program out there is capable of adapting at the speed it should be. So I think being in a mindset of continuous education, where you might grab some micro credentials, micro courses here and there, and get some base education in one way, but keep adding by doing these smaller pieces, is a smart thing to do. My engineering degree didn't bring me any climate science, but I got to learn it by doing all sorts of other courses, and some of them I did on my own. It's quite powerful what you can find on the internet. Um, at a very similar level, and maybe I'll use a story to explain or illustrate a purpose. I have a friend who did a master's in forestry, and ended up becoming an energy modeler. And one could argue that it's not exactly the path you would imagine, because she didn't learn energy modeling in school. Even better than that, she went to an energy modeling company and said, you would not typically hire me because I don't have experience. I don't even know how to do an energy model. I'll work for you for free for 1 month. You'll have to train me. I'm a quick learner. And after a month, if I know how to do an energy model and you like how I do it, then you hire me. And, she got the job. So that's pretty creative. And that brings me to the next point. I wish our society would reward introverts as much as it rewards extroverts, but I don't think it does. Like, I think I think those who are maybe a bit more, maybe louder, tend to get more attention. And it's a bit unfortunate because introverts have so much they can bring to the climate change discussion. So if you're an introvert, and I guess we have to agree on the definition of what's an introvert. Like in my mind, an introvert is someone that doesn't get energized by being on a stage, meeting people, chatting all night. To me, an introvert can do it if they have to do it. They'll be exhausted at the end of the night. But it's not necessarily that you're shy and you can't do it. It's just that if you had a choice, you wouldn't do it. I would say if you're an introvert, allow yourself once a week or once a month to go out there and meet people and do the things that are maybe not easy or natural to you, because it sounds like the workplace, the way I see it in BC anyway, is a lot about knowing people and having someone that says, I think I have someone that would need someone like you. And I used to be angry at this whole networking piece because I thought it was something like you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. As long as you know people, you're good. And I realized that's not at all what it is. It's just that people are nervous about hiring without having some kind of a reference or someone say, trust me, that person will work hard or that person is accountable and so if you don't know anybody and nobody is willing to say, this person is good, I think you're going to work harder at getting the career you want. If you're an extrovert, maybe it's not a problem because that's what you do, meet people. But if you're an introvert, I would schedule in my week or in my month some time to network. Um, and that would be kind of the last piece. So that's a skill in itself, and it can be developed through practice. Um, yeah, maybe I'll stop there. That would be my skills: being adaptable, be willing to be a lifelong learner, and being willing to network, and show you can work with other people with different profiles is certainly uh, a plus.
Can I jump in on the networking piece? I think when I was in my undergraduate, I was given the same advice: network, network, network. I never really understood what that meant or how to do it. But I kind of maybe want to give you like the reverse perspective, and because it made me think a lot about networking in a different way. So like right now, I come across a bunch of job postings all the time, but I don't know who's interested in it. I don't know who to send it to. All I can do is just generally post it on my social media feeds, right? Or like send it to broad mailing lists. But sometimes a job comes up where I'm like, hey, like I know this person was looking for a job that kind of looks like this, and then I'm suddenly able to pass that along to that person, right? So I'm not saying this to promise that if you if you connect with me, I'll be able to find you a job, but just the sense that um, that sort of networking is important because it's like connecting dots, right? Um, Broad email lists don't work that well. Employers often have a hard time finding the right candidates. Even I think like right now, I've heard the job markets. Um, I've heard in general, not in the energy space, because I just said it's great time to find a job, but in general that it is difficult. Um, so I just went through a hiring process. We're hiring two co-op students, and it's like slightly different, but it was a lot of effort to try to find the right person, and like I think we're pretty happy with the folks we found, but uh, you know, for an employer, not just knowing someone who you might be able to trust. Like I think Alex, you're right. Oftentimes, it's easy to be like, I know this person is going to do a good job.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
give them a call. I guess in government we have sometimes where our hands are tied. We have to do like we have to cast a really wide net. But even so, um, there's no guarantee we'll get the precise candidates. Um, I, I guess maybe to give you a bit of hope too, in case you're going through this, because I know I did. You'll send out 50 applications and hear nothing from any of them, right? Uh, the flip side of it too is often when we're hiring, we'll get like 150 applications and 100 of them will be junk. 100 of them will be like automated, sent by robots that don't make sense. So we can filter them out, right? But it's like it does become a game of just putting out volume, because it takes a lot of effort to filter through junk as employers, right? Looking to hire, and being able to network, being able to like have people help think about jobs that might relate to you, or being able to express to people jobs that you're interested in. So I think sometimes it can fairly help go through these hiring processes. The other thing I want to say to that point too is I myself am still uncomfortable with this, but telling people you're looking for a job has always felt like, I don't know, and it's very vulnerable, right? But it's tremendously helpful because of the same thing. So however you think is best for yourself, I would say when you go out, if you go out and like reach out to people, yeah, sorry, I should be more clear. Networking to me means, finding people who are doing interesting things, cold emailing them, online networking, cold emailing them, being like, hey, I'm really interested in what you do. Can I learn a bit more about you do? Or I guess like, sometimes you don't have to cold email. Sometimes it's just a friend of a friend, but whatever. At the end of it, or sometime during that conversation, if you're interested in what they're doing or their field, say to them explicitly, I'm looking for a job. Can you do you have anything in mind, or can you keep me in mind? Because like what I said, they might not be hiring, but they'll come across tons of stuff. And it's like way easier for humans to connect those dots than online search engines like Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever.
I'm gonna say something that maybe I'll deny that I said, although it's recorded. I guess I'll say it's a language issue. I didn't really understand what I was saying. You'd be surprised by how biased recruitment systems are, even in government. There's this general desire to be fair and do the right thing. But if someone comes in with a reference, someone knows someone, the committee itself starts thinking differently. Like you can easily increase your chances of getting the job just by going past just submitting a resume. And that's maybe the most obvious advice ever. But if you come across a job posting that you really like and really want, don't send a generic cover letter. Like, write a cover letter that is specific to the job and try to be different in it. And the last piece, recent story on my end, I got a phone call this summer from a person I've never met. And she says, I know someone who knows you. I got your phone number. I live in Victoria, but I'll be in Vancouver next week. And I'm thinking about moving back to the Lower Mainland. And I hear you guys are doing some cool things. Would you have time for coffee? Went for coffee with her. I thought, oh, wow, she's super smart, really, really interesting. I don't have a job for her. Um, but we agreed to stay in touch. She does a follow up. It never feels like she's harassing me. It never feels like she wants a job from me. It feels more like she's interested in what I'm doing and she wants to learn. And I have an employee who quits 3 months later, and I'm in real trouble, like in real trouble. I turn around, I call her, I say, "Are you still moving to the Lower Mainland?" She says, "Yes." And 2 days later, she had a laptop, and she was ready to go. And so there's a bit of luck there, for sure. But if she hadn't said hi, my name is Melissa, and I think what you're doing is interesting, I would not have offered her a job. So think of that. You don't have to call and ask for a job. You can call and ask for coffee. I mean, during COVID, it's a Zoom. I guess maybe it's a Zoom-based coffee, but um, just say, I want to learn about what you do. Send Jason or I an email tomorrow morning and say, tell me more, and maybe we go from there. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's
So
never been
many.
easier. Just let me be clear. It's never been easier too, right? Like COVID sucks because you can't meet a person in person, but also you can meet like more people per day. You don't have to spend
Yeah.
a lot of time commuting, which
Yeah.
back in my day was difficult because you, yeah, you sometimes would have to figure out, okay, how do I squeeze this into my day, right? So
Amazing. So many great pieces of wisdom. There is one thing, actually, Alex, you reminded me of this. Something I'm supposed to say at the beginning of these presentations is that the views expressed herein are solely those of the United Nations Association in Canada and our partner organizations presenting, and do not reflect on any other UNA Canada partners or funders. I should have said that at the top. Thanks for reminding me, Alex. So many points, things that I really want to underline. Jason, your point about adaptability in the face of the whole ecosystem changing, a great point from that top level view. Things are going to change in such fundamental ways. Being able to adapt, being able to collaborate through that is going to be key to success. And I'll also share networking. I had a conversation with someone a few nights ago. It was somebody who I volunteered with in university. I hadn't talked to him for 6 years. He was talking to me to invite me to his wedding, told me that he quit his job a month or so ago. He has an informational interview with somebody who I know on Monday. And we weren't talking about his work stuff, but it turned into something hopefully for him. So fingers crossed for Curtis. So thank you, Alex and Jason. So many great points in there. We're going to bring the panel to an end here and jump into breakout rooms. So hopefully you have a few great questions for Alex and Jason. I will hit end recording now.